Hi everyone, my name's Kenny. I'm from Geneva, Asheville County. I had a good family. My first drinking drunk was at 8 with my mother and uncle. At 11, I did crack, coke, opium, alcohol, weed with my father. God rest his soul, he ain't here no more. He died at 37 years old due to this disease. And I grew up doing this thing and thinking this is what was cool. I know that today it's not the life that God wanted me to be. We drank all day with my 8-year-old brother, and I thought that was cool because, my dad did that. We ended up in Bardmore at a dope house. 4 dudes pulled my dad out, beat him. I tried to go save him. I ended up with internal bleeding. They ripped my spleen in half, so I have no more spleen. I did a month and a half at Cleveland University Hospital at 16. That was the life of my dad. I thought that was cool. Did that stop me? No, that just started it even more. At 18, I had pancreatitis. I ended up in Cleveland University Hospital, and they told me I couldn't drink no more. So I did other things. I smoked pot, did meth, did heroin, and then another year and a half later, I started drinking again. Once I took that first sip, it was a train that I could not stop because that's what I thought was cool. I wanted to be the best junkie and the best alcoholic that I could be. That was the worst mistake of my life, of thinking that way, but it is what it is, and I move on from it. God has been there a lot in my life through these things of keeping me alive, and I chose the path that I chose because I wanted to live on the streets. I wanted to be a part of the streets. I wanted the violence, the drugs, the alcohol, because I thrived for it. I loved it. As I looked out the window and as the train goes by, it says, pray, God can hear you. So I prayed. God, let me get probation, anger management. I'll do a few more days in jail. It's fine. I'll do that. Without not talking to nobody, I got exactly what I asked for. Now, did that stop me? No, it didn't. I wasn't home 2 hours and put another needle in my arm. And I did it from all my own choices. It was that time of I knew that something needed to change. About a month or so later, I come to Signature Health because there was just that morning that I knew I could not do this anymore. I got here and they said, what are you willing to do? And I said, I'm willing to do anything you want me to do. January 19th, 2015, I came and started the Suboxone program. And it was the day that it started to change my life. I love this place. Somebody seen a change in me that I didn't see, and she let me stay. But I try to be the best person that God wants me to be. And this is a life that I wouldn't trade for nothing. A week before my dad passed away from cancer, he told me, he said, Scotty, don't be like me. Don't die like me. Because there's much more to life than drugs and alcohol. Today, I get to wake up in a wonderful world and trying to start a new life. But I leaned on God. Really leaned on God, and he helped me through, and I am 10 times better than I was. My counselor, I come in one day for an hour, and she said, hey, I want to put you in for the 2016 Achiever of the Year Award. So we all stand up front, and we all get our plaques, but then they're going to call the winner out of the nominees for the 2016 Achiever of the Year, and I won. Because I put forth effort to do the next right thing, to try to better my life, because I got tired of living the way that I was living out there. And there is hope. I promise. There is hope out there for you guys. Ladies, whoever's watching, people out there that are using, there is a better way. Signature Health saved my life. I know I've been there. I've struggled a lot in my life. You need help. I needed help. And there's a place that you can get it. And there's people that are willing to help you if you're willing to put forth the effort of wanting to get clean and sober. But there is a better life today, and you can get it if you want it.
Hi, my name is Cheri. I'm Kenny's mom. I just want to let you know that addiction is a hard and troubling thing. As a mom with a child that has an addiction problem, you don't realize that it's addiction, and then you sit and you think, what did I do to cause this? When in fact I didn't cause it. How can I cure him? I can't cure him. I can help him. I can educate myself on the struggles of alcohol and drugs and going through, getting sobriety. I can educate myself on that. You have some parents, friends, whatever, and their kids are getting scholars and they're doing this and they're doing that, and mine's sitting in jail. That's hard. As a parent, the more that you become verbal about it and it's out there. Addiction is a family issue, not just their problem. I would learn how the other people that are struggling, how they made it 20 years. Because that's amazing. Because unless you've walked beside addiction or you have addiction, you have no idea what it is. And it's easy to say, oh, you can just flip a switch and everything's going to be done. Well, it's not. It's a lifelong battle. That's a hard thing for a parent to swallow, but that doesn't mean that they're a little broken, but they're fixable. No matter what he's done, I've always been proud because he's mine. When he told me he was coming to Signature Health, as a mother with a child with addiction, you've heard it before. 25 months later, to see him experience life in a whole new light is amazing. Through this program, he was able to put down that, guard and just let himself be him. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to cry. I remember phone calls, Mom, I don't know how to handle all the blessings that life is giving me now. I'm not used to this. It's a tough road, but if you're willing to work the program and do the next right thing, things are going to work for you. Just don't give up hope. Educate yourself on addiction because it is a disease. There's help. If it's just a lot of work to get there. Once an addict, always an addict, and it can change in every given second, and I don't take that for granted. But I can actually say I can sleep at night. It's going to take its course no matter how I feel, but right now, this moment, it's a blessing. I brought him into this world and I wasn't going to let the drugs take him out, so.
My name is Debbie and I'm from Asheville. I live in the city. I have 5 children. 4 of them are heroin addicts or recovering heroin addicts. When I knew that they were on heroin, when I actually found out what they were doing, it was probably 6 years. My oldest one started doing drugs when he was 14 years old, drinking, smoking weed. I never knew the extent of how bad it was until he was older, and then they would reveal stuff to me. My daughter is an LPN and she gets migraines and she has a lot of anxiety, so she started abusing her prescription drugs, and in the process was introduced to heroin through her brother. Back in 2010, 2011, my son committed a crime that landed him in prison 30 years to life. And that's when everything just spiraled out of control. And about 6 months later, my daughter revealed to me that her and her sibling, along with their 4 kids, were going to have to move in with me because they were heroin addicts. In a nutshell, my daughter sought out help. She got out 2 months later and relapsed and overdosed. Didn't scare her enough though to stop her. In the meantime, my son got caught in Lake County with enough heroin to give him a good felony. He was facing 1.5 years in prison as well. And my whole life was just spiraling out of control. I can't have 2 kids in prison and they're all on heroin. My daughter, when she was with my son in Lake County and they got busted, it scared her enough to go seek help. She is now 3.5 years clean and sober. My son, when he got caught, I took his children. I got full custody of them. He finally got arrested by the APD, thank God. On Easter, he sat in there for about 3 months, and I thought that he was okay. So I bonded him out. Big mistake. As soon as I bonded him out, he went back to using again. So I threw him out. He lived on Walnut Beach. That was really hard to do. In the meantime, he kept losing weight and losing weight and losing weight. He got arrested in the courtroom. 18 months in prison. He is 22 months clean now. There is hope. There is hope for recovery. There is hope for your children. There is hope for our loved ones. Just don't ever give up. And never giving up that hope. I have watched my kids go through recovery, but I also know that it's one day at a time. I blamed myself when I found out that they were using. I know now that I can't take the blame for their choices. I think a lot of it is the guilt. I think I've learned the hard way not to sit there and judge somebody else, because it comes back at you. And that could be your child, it could be your mother. It happens so fast. I never saw it coming. So if you think that something's going on with your loved one, go ask questions, go find out, go get information, get educated. Not to label, but to treat them like they're a human being and their life is worth something. Just to never give up hope on your child. Don't ever give up hope. Seek any avenue that you can, not just for your child, but for yourself. It does hurt. It plays a ripple effect. I kept seeing on Facebook all these people that are overdosing and something needs to be done. And it's like, I'm so tired of seeing it. Why can't we do something? We gotta do something. And even if it's just one person, even if one person's life changes, that's somebody's child or somebody's dad, it's worth it to me.
Hello everyone, my name is Dalton Witt. I'm a Ashtabula County native, grew up in Jefferson. I am a recovered or recovering drug addict and alcoholic. I know it's a weird thing for people to hear. It's an even weirder thing for me to say out loud. I'm an addict, I'm a drug addict, but these are things that need to be talked about. I'm 39 years old. I have about a year and a half of sobriety. I've been a functioning drug addict since 19 years old, 20 years old. So I grew up on a farm in Jefferson, South County here in Ashtabula County. Pretty normal family life growing up. Parents who loved me, siblings who loved me. I grew up in a house without alcohol, something I've never had experience with. We can look to a lot of reasons why addiction happens. It's real. It's a progressive illness. And when I say that, I speak to my experience in addiction, which is a constant ramping up of substance abuse over the last 15 to 20 years of my life, and the constant or consistent lowering of the bar of standards on who I associate with, what my goals are in life as an adult or as a professional or my personal life. And those two things correlate at some point to make a perfect storm where you're given the gift of desperation if you're an addict of my sort, which is being homeless. I would say 9th or 10th grade, I'm drinking and smoking pot on the regular, and I'm a guy who academically is doing okay. I'm an athlete. I'm involved in our sports teams at Jefferson. I'm living the cookie cutter American childhood. But I drank and smoked pot all through high school. My freshman year of college, those things got turned up a little bit. I carried through a cocaine addiction, LSD, MDMA and ecstasy, and of course marijuana and alcohol all through college. This illness, it affects all types, all races, people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So with a year and a half, roughly, year and 5 months sober, and analyzing this process, participating in Alcoholics Anonymous, I am sure of one simple thing, and that is that this is not an intellectual problem. I've analyzed every aspect of this. The quicker that we understand as addicts or alcoholics that there's something different about our constitution as who we are as people, the quicker we can get on to asking for help. That's a hard thing to do. If you're someone who right now is struggling with substance abuse, I understand the isolation, the guilt, the shame. Those are factors that drove me away from people that could help me. Whether you're a parent watching this or someone who suffers from a substance abuse disorder yourself, I promise you, if you reach out to people in our county, you will be welcomed with open arms. So with my year and a half of sobriety, it's not all rainbows and sunshine and candy canes every day. It's hard work. I've been able to do what we should be able to do as Americans, which is to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. And if you're in the middle of battling addiction right now, that seems miles away. You might be looking at this screen right now and saying to yourself, Dalton, I'm not smiling. I've painted myself into a corner that I can't get out of. I am in a trap that I can't spring. I understand that. There is a better, easier, softer way, but it's going to require maybe going away for a little bit. It was very difficult for me to go to treatment. It took being arrested. It took 2 felonies, looking at someone who never had more than a traffic ticket up until a year and a half ago. I ended up overdosing in my car at Flying J parking lot where I was living. I was arrested by our Ashtabula County Sheriff's Department, and I had left my sunroof and my windows down, and it rained that night. The brain disorder of addiction, of substance abuse, puts you in a constant free fall of the lowering of the bar of standards, and eventually we all find ourselves at the bottom.
My name is Barry Newsome. I am a recovered alcoholic and drug addict and convict. I grew up in an alcoholic home where it was just a normal thing to do. So it was a learned behavior for me. Growing up, I was really good in school. I was really good in sports, but I had a problem coexisting with people. So the first opportunity I got was to drink. I started getting into trouble. I am a 4-time convicted felon. I had been to prison, I had been to jail. I've probably done over 3 years behind bars and probably 19 in my head. I think when my father died in 2012, it was almost like the resentment was released and I was able to get sober. I did have one relapse. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I want to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. I don't think that's anybody's ambition. I guess it doesn't matter why I am an alcoholic or an addict, but what I do about it today. Probably in my early 30s, I was arrested by the SWAT team on June 13th of 2003. That's the stigma that we talk about. I was labeled, that's just the discrimination, it's a hate. I'm tattooed as a convict. I just kept going and I didn't see no end. And the last time I got arrested, October 28th, 2013, it was a possession of heroin charge. I knew I was powerless. My life was definitely unmanageable. I did come to believe and trust in a power greater than myself, and I did make that decision to turn my will on my life. I think it was divine intervention. I believe God speaks through people. As soon as I had surrendered to the disease itself, all these great things started happening for me, and I had a bond I couldn't even get out. I had 2 more felonies which were seeking indictments and 5 misdemeanors. But things started happening, and I started this process, but in the meantime, this stigma that we talk about stayed with me. I have to be able to take the punishment because resentment is the #1 offender. And I have to believe today everything was the way it was supposed to be, but I heard the chatter in the background. He's not going to make it. But yet all this time I just kept walking. I just kept going, one step at a time. And all of a sudden, I got into drug court. The felonies started dropping off. I got convicted on a couple of them. That brought me into drug court. Family members of an alcoholic and an addict can be just as sick or sicker than the alcoholic themselves, because it is a family disease. So what affected me directly affected everybody else around me indirectly. Today I go uptown, everybody knows me in Jefferson. Used to be in a bad way, now it's in a good way. But it's a process, it's a recalibration of my thinking that has to take place through the step work, and it's not easy. It's not those for who need it, it's for those who want it. Everything in my life that's happened, I believe, has been spiritually guided towards, not so much emotionally driven. Actions speak louder than words. Being an addict, we want what we want it now. That's why we do it. We're emotionally driven. But when we become spiritually guided through the step work, we don't try to look for our purpose. We let it find us. Sometimes it takes a life-altering incident like mine, when my father died, for this to happen. We're indirectly sick as well. Addiction is a disease. It don't ever be fooled otherwise. It is a disease of our thinking. They didn't choose to be an addict. That wasn't their choice. They might have been having fun at first, but when they lost the power of choice, they have no choice now. Seek help. Be teachable. Do not give up. People in recovery are the strongest people you're ever going to meet. The pain doesn't last forever. It really doesn't. If I believe I'm going to make it, or if I believe I'm not going to make it, I'm right either way, because that's how it's going to end up.
My name is Kristen Derr. I'm 31 years old. I'm from Asheville, Ohio. I moved up here when I was 4 years old. My childhood was a bit of a rough one. My father committed suicide prior to me being born. So I never knew my real father, which is something that kind of stayed with me for a long time when I was a kid, and it's something I use as an excuse to go get high over also. Through junior high, it started to get bad when my grandfather got sick. He was, prior to me not having a dad, he was my daddy. I grew up, I followed him everywhere. My home life wasn't the greatest. There was a lot of drinking, there was a lot of fighting. You could feel the tension when you're in my house. You could just feel the animosity my parents had towards each other. He was my stepfather, but he's my dad to me, no matter what. He had a son, Tommy, that was a few years older than me. We recently just lost him about 1.5 years ago. He passed away, he committed suicide, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've had to deal with in my sobriety, but I stayed sober because nothing's gonna take that from me. The first time I ever drank or did anything was about 10 years old. I was with my friends. It was kind of the peer pressure thing. All of a sudden I fit in and I felt like my true self. I didn't touch anything else for a few years, and then after my grandfather got sick and he died after 13, it was a free-for-all. I didn't know how to deal with life. I was never taught how to deal with life because my mom wasn't either, you know, so there was that cycle. I am also dual diagnosis. I have borderline personality disorder, major depressive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety disorder. I have so many disorders in there. My PTSD comes from the night I seen my grandfather pass away. He was having flashbacks. He thought the devil was after him, and being 13 years old watching this, it was really hard. It traumatized me. I'm also a recovering cutter. Coming up, it'll be 3 years from cutting. And I don't know if I said my sobriety date, but it's March 10th, 2015. After my grandfather passed away, it was really bad. My mom let me have older guys stay over. There was pot, there was pills, I did anything. I didn't care. I had a faith in God. I went to church, I was in youth group. At about 10 years old, I was molested by that youth group leader. And then once my grandpa died, pardon me for saying it, but it was middle finger to the air. You know, my dad left, my grandpa's dead, my mom's doing whatever she needs to do to cope. What do I do? By 17, I had done everything but heroin and a few other drugs. I was a full-blown cocaine addict my senior year of high school. I did a meth binge. It didn't matter. I tried to commit suicide at 17 years old because I wanted help. I reached out for help. I told everybody I felt like I was going to commit suicide. When I was supposed to go back to the Menor area to see a psych, I had attempted suicide. I woke up that next morning and I ended up getting placed in Laurelwood at 17. I've had multiple psychiatric visits because of that, because for me it is my addiction and my mental health go like this together. I got help and I was good for a few months. You know, I stopped doing all the drugs, I stopped doing everything, tried to get it together. Nobody in the family graduated, nobody in my family went to college, so I was like the golden child that was, you know, gonna do all this stuff, and then I ended up turning into the black sheep just like that. I dropped out again my second senior year. I was doing everything. That's when I started to incorporate Oxycontin and pills and cocaine and meth, and it didn't matter to me. I never had limits, I just did. It was more and more and more and more and more. I went back to school my third senior year. I remember driving by and seeing everybody go there. I went to my health teacher. I went to her and I said, Miss Penn, I need help. I want to graduate. And she worked with the school and I ended up getting my diploma and I got to graduate. Almost 20 years old, but I graduated. I'm gonna get things together. I'm gonna do things better, which without help, it's impossible. I met a guy in Youngstown. I was doing morphine. I was doing oxys, Percocet, Vicodin, and it didn't matter. By 21, I moved to California and decided to go get pregnant. And I had my little girl, but even after I had her, I was right back to the same thing. At about 22, 23 is when I first stuck a needle in my arm. I swore to God that I would never do that, even though me and him had a broken relationship, because I loved the drugs and alcohol too much and I loved the cutting too much. You put two of those things together, you put self-harm and a narcotic together, I was done for. I remember my little girl crying as I'm in the bathroom. Mommy, what are you doing? Mommy, what are you doing? After I'm screaming at her prior to this. And I promised myself if I ever have kids, I wouldn't put my kids through that pain that I went through. And I was doing the same exact thing. You know, and my daughter's 9 now and I have a 2-year-old son. I didn't want somebody that had a good life. I wanted somebody that was getting, you know, high. So that's, you know, I was a full-blown heroin addict by 23 years old. Everything I promised myself I would never be. And I thought that was my lowest point, but it wasn't. I ended up doing good for a couple weeks. I went back a few times to rehab and I kept trying, but every time I did it my way. Like, that's not for me. You guys are crazy. This is a cult. Well, I'm glad to say I'm part of that cult today. By the end of it, I was shooting meth. I was 100 pounds smaller than I am now. There was nothing to me, and I walked back into treatment again, and none of my counselors except for one of them recognized me. The last time I was in there was 4 years ago. I gave up custody of my daughter to my mom. I was never in trouble with children's services, but God knows I should have been. I was taking her to my meth cook's house to take showers because I had no hot water in my house. And finally, when my daughter seen my meth cook smoking a bulb, she was 4 years old, I will never forget the look on her face, because I kept her away from seeing all that. Even though I was the lowest junkie there could be and the worst mom, I didn't let her see people shooting up or stuff like that. But the look on her face, I'll never forget, but that still didn't keep me sober. I was lying to everybody, telling them I was sober, and I wasn't, because I was trying to get my daughter back, because I was still in my sick thinking I deserve her. Everything I had was gone. I was gone. There was nothing left of me. And then going down to see my family in Loudonville and sitting there like, what are you doing? But then I started going to Celebrate Recovery, where I met my friend Tasha, and I started slowly getting it together. I was still lying to everybody about how long I had clean, but I was staying sober. I was told years ago that I could never have any more children. As I'm becoming closer to God during all this, I remember praying, okay, I'm gonna pray for God's will. I've never done this before. 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with my little boy, which the baby I was told I could never have again. And I'm like, okay, God, I see you. My little boy tried coming out at 25 weeks and gave me a bit of a scare, and he kept trying to come out, but thank God he stayed until full term. By the time I gave birth to him, my mom had seen my progress, and she gave me my home back. The woman from the church donated so much stuff for my son. I ended up buying a car, my first car. I was off all my meds, obviously. When I had my son, I got postpartum depression. They put me on a medication, and the doctor did not warn me of the side effects of what it would be like. I called my friend up because he lived right down the road, and he brought some heroin over and a needle. My son was asleep on the futon downstairs, and I remember shooting up. I remember sitting at the dining room table, and every time that I used to get high, I wanted to die because I was too scared to kill myself. And this time, and I've never overdosed, this time I felt myself. I remember looking over at my son laying there, and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I crawled over on the floor, and I dropped down on the same floor that I prayed so many times before. I'm like, God, I don't want to die. For this once, I don't want to die. And I crawled up next to him and I held him. And I went out and I thought I was dead. But I woke up and I'm like, thank you, God. I go to community counseling. I ran into community counseling and on my group. Thank God it was the day I had group. It was a Tuesday. I'll never forget it. I ran and I told everybody, I'm like, I messed up. I got high. I don't want to die. I can't do this. I went to celebrate recovery that night. I was a mess, bawling in front of everybody. I didn't care because I was not going to die. From that point on, I have worked my ass off. And it has been hard. I've lost my aunt, my uncle committed suicide, my brother committed suicide, my best friend that I met in rehab, and this is something I wanted to share too. My good friend Tasha took me when it happened. He was 31 years old, and what keeps me sober on my days is I look at his ashes. You know, he left a family behind. I met him in rehab. He was one of my best friends and helped me through AA. I stayed sober through that. I have stayed sober through so much because there's no reason I don't want to die today. I have a life today. I'm getting married. I have both of my children. You know, I have a beautiful home. I'm going to college. It's not about just stopping doing drugs and stopping drinking. You have to change who you are. Who you are is the problem. My mind, my thinking is the problem. I have to dive into what hurts. It's gonna hurt like hell, but I need to face that. I'm always gonna be an addict and I'm always gonna be an alcoholic, but I don't have to act on that today. I can be the person that I've always had inside of me. For once in my life, a sense of self. I am constantly moving forward, and even if I take a step back, I still come back from it. So today life is good because I chose to have faith and stay sober.
Hi, my name's Tasha. I'm from Conneaut, Ohio. I'm 40 years old. I've been in recovery since March 21st, 2008. So I grew up, you know, in an alcoholic home. You know, I was basically a really good kid. I'm the oldest. I have two little brothers. When my parents got divorced, I always wanted to connect with a family that I fit in with or whatever, and I never wanted mine. I was left alone a lot, and I started drinking on my own. I didn't drink at first to get drunk. I would come home, I would get into the cabinet, and I would take a swig of whatever was up there. There was something inside of me that said that this was a good idea to do. There wasn't prescription pills in my house. I was taking over-the-counter medicine with a shot of alcohol, and then I would go play. And that's how my addiction started for me. I was hanging out with other kids that didn't have parents home after school. That's when I started drinking to be intoxicated. I knew that I had a problem. I have, you know, addiction runs through both sides of my family, especially alcoholism. And I just kind of wanted to escape that and do my own thing. So by the time I got to high school, I was drinking daily. I was stealing alcohol from the liquor store. I would go to the Golden Dawn and take a bottle of cheap vodka. I was shoplifting. I mean, that's how a 14-year-old gets alcohol. I was smoking pot. I was taking diet pills because I'm overweight, and I really wasn't. That's kind of what started my speed addiction, I believe, you know, was the pills. I missed a lot of school. I was a chronic runaway, so I would meet these older guys, not necessarily older, but older teenage guys, and I would leave. I would just take off. You know, when we were doing horrible things, stealing cars, selling drugs, doing drugs. I went to jail for the first time. I've been in and out of juvenile detention. As a teenager, I was a full-blown alcoholic. I just didn't want to give it up because I'm not even old enough to go to a bar, so why would I want to give that up? You know, I think I was 16 or 17 before I even started smoking cigarettes. Like, I was already on to other things. Constantly in trouble at school, suspended. I got threatened with expulsion my junior senior year, and I dropped out. I was on probation, juvenile probation, of course. My adolescent life was a real disaster, and I just kept partying. My mom tried to say I was suicidal or whatever, and I never really tried to kill myself purposely. I wanted to die, but I didn't have the balls, I thought that if I didn't wake up one day, I didn't wake up one day, and that was all right. I picked up a lot of drugs then, we were doing cocaine, we were doing acid, methamphetamines came into my life. When I tried that for the first time, it was like a whole new world to me. Like, I felt so good. I used that first day and I stayed awake for 24 hours, and then I didn't use during that 24 hours. But the very next day after that, I did go to sleep and I was off and running. That next day, I got more, and it was probably 12 years later. It happened that quickly. I had a boyfriend, we had a house together, we had a dog, a cat, a four-wheeler, a $30,000 truck. We had all this stuff, because stuff was what made you an adult, and it's what made you who you were. And that's how it went. But that relationship, it got violent, and I left that, and that's just the cycle of my 20s went. It was relationship violence, drugs. I picked up drinking again because, I can't put that down. I really tried to change some of the things that I did, because I'm like, I'm not gonna go spend my adult life in jail. And I knew that if I didn't change behaviors, that's where I was gonna be. I did drugs at work. I was never sober at my job, and I worked in a factory. Somewhere along that time, it was 2003. I got pregnant, and I was in a new relationship. I was with this new boy, and he didn't do drugs like I did. He drank beer, and that was okay. Never thought that I would have children in my life. That was never my life's goal. But here I am, okay, I'm like 25, I think. All right, we'll try to have this kid. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not gonna do methamphetamine anymore. I'm not gonna be that parent. So here I am pregnant, 3 months pregnant, prioritizing what drugs I'm gonna do. Anyway, I was, I think 24 weeks along. My water broke. I had what they call PROM, a preterm rupture of membranes, and I was in the hospital for like 2 weeks, and then they sent me to Rainbow Babies. My water never came back in and never refilled. My option was pretty much like I had to terminate my pregnancy. What they did was induce labor, and I had a stillborn. And I was okay for a little bit. And after that day, I went into a really bad depression, and I laid on the couch for probably almost 3 weeks. I just lay there and cried and chain smoked cigarettes. And then the drugs came into my house. They came into my house. And because, I still blame myself, thinking maybe, was it because I was a drug addict that I lost my kid? Is it like a withdrawal thing that I didn't even realize that I'm going, all this stuff that I'm a piece of shit. I'm a failure as a woman, because what woman can't have a kid, So I got high. And I took off. And I took off for like 2 weeks. That's when everything really went downhill, because I really didn't care anymore. I started doing oxys in between there, on top of the meth. I started experimenting with Oxycontin. I went to work at the bar, and I drank. And I drank, and I drank, and I drank. And then I went out to another bar in Pennsylvania that night, and I drank, and I drank, and I drank, and I just wanted to go home. Nobody would take me when I wanted to go. So I got in my car, and I drove half a mile down the road, and I got my first DUI. And because I wasn't paying any of my bills, and I didn't have a good paycheck coming in, I started doing other activities to keep my habit. That's just all I concentrated on. Short of a year of that, after my DUI, I was homeless. I couch surfed, but I didn't have a home address. I had a couple duffel bags. At this time and this point in my life, I was only with using people. There was some sheriffs looking for me. One of my girlfriends had gotten picked up, and she contacted a lawyer, and she got a hold of me, and they're like, they're looking for you too, dude. You're like my co-defendant on this case. And I'm like, okay, I'm out of here, I did go to the state of New York for a little bit, and I got brought back. I came back on March 16th. March 17th was my birthday. I was at my dad's house that day, and I heard this knock on the door. For some reason, it made me look out the window first, and I seen this black unmarked car, and I'm like, no. A couple hours later, I'm watching TV, and there's my name and my driver's license picture on the Erie News. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never getting out of this one, And I didn't make it. I didn't make it out of the house. I got arrested in my bedroom, in bed, and they handcuffed me and pulled me up out of bed. So I went to jail, and I sat. and I sat. But while I was in jail, there was this little Mexican girl, and she always prayed and she always read the Bible, and she spoke really good English, so she was teaching me about the Bible and about God, and I had hate for God. And here I am sitting in jail with this Mexican girl, and she's trying to teach me about God, and I started to open up to the idea of it. My one girlfriend that I met up there, she's like, let's start going to AA. And no, dude, I'm not going to AA. And she's like, it gets you out of the cell. I'm like, good point. So that's how I started my recovery journey, not even knowing that that's what I was doing. All I could think of in my head was, I don't know when I'm going to drink again. I don't know when I'm going to get high again. And then this girl come in, and she told my story. She was the first person I ever commented on, and I hugged her and talked to her afterwards, and I'd never done that before. And it's so cliche to say, like, I found God in jail, but I didn't find God, you know. He found me or whatever. I had really made up with my mom at that time. She never knew about my meth. I don't know how, but she never knew until it was on the front, you know, in the paper. That's how she found out. Conneaut woman from meth manufacturing. They hung it on the refrigerator. I was like, she was willing to help me, you know. I have a family friend of ours that had gotten sober, and he was the only one that I wanted to communicate with. When I first got locked up, I'm like, I need to talk to Teddy, you know, I have to talk to him. I knew the life that he lived, and I seen the change in him, and if he could do it, and I could relate to him on a level, and there was a trust there, you know. I do carry myself differently today, and I recognize that change in me today. I started to gain back self-respect, and at first I didn't know that I didn't have any until I got sober, and then I realized, like, wow, you really did not care. I got a job. I was really persistent and very honest, and it was hard at first because now I'm a convicted felon. Some people will work with you, but they see a manufacturing of methamphetamine and they're like, oh no. You know, we're not gonna have you there. I got with a temp agency, and I'm like, look, I drug test twice a week. I told her my story. I told her what I did. I showed her meeting slips. I'm like, look, this isn't who I am right now, you know? And I don't wanna go back to that. But if I don't get a job, what am I gonna do? You know, I hung in there, and the woman from the temp agency, she's like, we're getting you work. And she did, you know, and I've been at that job, it will be 8 years in August. Finally, it came to that time where they're gonna hire me in, and I went in the supervisor's office, and he was like, do you have felonies? And I bawled. And he's like, we don't have people like you. We don't get this. We're just gonna leave that blank. And I was like, oh, and then I cried some more. As a felon and as a drug addict, I mean, we have to prove ourselves so much more. And even being a woman in a manufacturing field, like, we just have to prove ourselves so much more. So those were some highlights of my recovery, but I've had a lot of bad things have happened. And really, when I look back on it, I think a lot of bad things have happened that were worse to me in sobriety than what happened when I was using. And like addictions in my family, I have 3 cousins had 3 cousins in recovery. And my cousin and me, we're 5 years apart, but we clicked. And we were inseparable, and we did everything together. And he could quote the big book, word for word, page for page. We shared a battery. My grandpa died, and then my dog got sick, and I had to put my dog down on Easter. My dog was my best friend, like my absolute only friend. You know, when I was homeless, he was with me, and he was all I had, was always at my side. So that was, and it's still tough to this day about that one. And then, you know, I've had multiple friends. I can't even tell you the numbers of friends I've lost due to addiction. My grandma got diagnosed with lung cancer. It was bad, and she was okay with it. Like, she was ready. She was ready to go. I was in the hospital with her. She ended up passing that night, and I was there, you know. I was laying in the hospital bed holding my grandma. No matter what I did, she didn't treat me any different for going to jail. She didn't treat me any different for becoming a felon. She didn't treat me like I was less than, because now all my truths were out. I didn't even think about using. I didn't even think about it. At this point in my recovery, I'm 3.5 years sober. I hadn't even really taken an aspirin, and I was scared. I was scared to take something, but I needed something, you know. Well, Jason was having these same problems, and what was weird is, like, we were having these problems together. But Jason went to a family doctor. Jason got put on Xanax. Jason abused Xanax on top of his drinking. I ended up having to take him to the hospital. They kept him for a couple days. I went up there to visit him, and when I was visiting him, he went into a grand mal seizure. Jason got out of the hospital about a week later. He was down in North Carolina maybe a week, and I got a call that he had died in his sleep. His body shut down, 30 years old. I got angry at AA. You failed him. All you guys failed him. I screamed at his sponsor, you know. I'm like, this is your guys' fault. Like, I tried. I was pretty much on a dry drunk, but yeah, I was still sober. I was 5 years sober then. I had managed to get my 5th year, and I had a spiritual awakening. And my God moment was that he didn't get me sober to take things away from me. He got me sober so that I could be there with them. I was there the day my grandpa died. I was with my dog. I was with my grandma. I wouldn't have been there. I wouldn't have been there for them. I wouldn't have been that part of Jason's life. You know, we wouldn't have had a friendship the way that we had. You know, they say that you only get friendships like that every once in a while, and I was very blessed to have that friendship. None of these things would I have been at if I was still using, because it was all about me. It changed. My recovery changed. I get to give back on a different level today. I'm proud of who I am today. I'm proud to have made it out alive, and people need to know that we can do this, you know, that you can be a meth addict, you can be an alcoholic, and you can stop and live a decent life today, you know, and get all those things back. You know, I have a car, I have a driver's license, I have a wonderful boyfriend, you know, we've been together almost 4 years, and that's never happened before either. Things are getting better, and I think they're getting better in society with the views of what an alcoholic is, with a view of what a drug addict is, and the view of a felon, that yeah, we did these things, yeah, those things are a part of us, but that's not the only thing about us, you know. I'm still a girl, I still have a heart, I still have hopes and dreams today, and now I have the skills to accomplish those today. Those are the things that gave me my life back, and I just want one person to get their life back today, and that's my purpose of living, you know. So thank you.